Welcome back to another Wednesday, and honestly, I cannot be hyped enough for this match. I hyped it up also last week, and this is the most legendary World Chess Championship match. I mean, it's gotta be. It's coming from one of the just most hectic players and most interesting players ever. It's Bobby Fischer, and I'm just gonna show you a little bit of like a list of the World Chess Championship matches. This is where I take my inspiration. Okay, now you know everything. Look at this period from the 1948 to 1972, and then even after that. I mean, look at that. It's all Soviets, and then here comes Fischer, right? Just like an island in the sea filled with Soviet players. And then even after that, I wouldn't really call Viktor Korchnoi, the most Swiss player ever, because technically he was still of Soviet origin. He just defected. Like even after that, the Soviet dominance in the 20th century is just something else. And then even after that, even after the title was split and all of that, it was still like dominated by Russian players until Anand came, and now Carlsen, of course. So I mean, just take a look at this. It's just fascinating. What Fischer had to go up against, and Fischer not only crushed his way to this match, World Chess Championship match, he just completely destroyed everybody, so that it was basically Fischer against a whole country. Like just the whole Soviet Union wanted Spassky to win against Fischer. And I mean, there's also many documentaries and stuff like that about this match. I'm not trying to make this extensive. Fischer just had some crazy demands, but somehow they got accepted. And at the end of the day, Spassky was also a great gentleman. And I mean, Fischer was definitely better than Spassky, no doubt about that. But still was a little bit crazy with the demands. And if Spassky basically was a little bit harsher, he could have walked away with the match. But I think that deep down, everybody knew that Fischer was better than Spassky. And without further ado, let's see game number one, the famous game number one. The thing is, I'm going to skip through the opening because this game is very known for the ending. I mean, the opening is not something really spectacular. It's basically like a drawn position. It's something that you would play, and then you would say draw, and then your opponent would say yes, and then you would just go home early, and then maybe do something else, prepare for the next game. It's usually game number one, so the players don't really want to go crazy from the beginning. But here's the moment. Here's the exact moment where this game begins to get interesting, because here in this position, Fischer can obviously play king e7. Fischer has the black pieces, by the way. Fischer can play king e7. Fischer can play whatever, right? But he decides to take this pawn, and you're gonna say, well, I know I should not take those pawns because of g3, and that's exactly what Spassky does. And now the bishop is trapped. But okay, Fischer calculated h5, h4, but now he's just gonna give up the bishop, and it's gonna be a bishop for 2 pawns. Can he still somehow save this? The thing is, they were nearing move 40, and then the game was adjourned, but the position is still lost, and Spassky did in fact manage to get the right configuration, and a couple moves later he actually wins the game. I'm not gonna get all into the specific moves, but the thing is, Fischer lost the first game, and he's gonna resign here soon because this pawn is defended, and Spassky is just gonna take the other pawn. This pawn is also gonna be stopped by the bishop from the d4 square, and then the bishop is just gonna sit on this diagonal, and Fischer is basically lost. So Fischer just goes wrong in game number one, and Spassky manages to capitalize on that and take a win. Now in game number two, Fischer was basically complaining that the cameras in the playing hall were just too noisy, and then he couldn't concentrate, so he basically forfeited that match. I mean, this is the whole match, d4, and then he resigned because he basically didn't show up. And Spassky just is now up 2-0. But this lead is one of the most fragile leads that I have ever seen, because the very next game, Spassky agreed to play Fischer in a room that was like in the back of, it was not in like in the front, the main playing hall, it was like in the back, and then Fischer could just get his noise things just simply out of the way. And I think, many players say that this was a big psychological step back from Spassky, and that's why I said at the beginning, if had Spassky been, like harsher, he could have said, no, we're playing with the cameras and that's it. You don't want to play with the cameras, okay, you can just go home, right? But Spassky, being a gentleman, he agreed to play, and I feel like Spassky really wanted to just play the match. And I'm just gonna quickly show you this match. This is also the match that inspired me to play the Benoni, and I don't know if you also feel like this, like the same with this, but you watch like a great player play a certain opening and then you just get inspired to do so. And then I went 0-5 with this opening at the very big tournament. It was actually the tournament that I went 0-9, so I lost all of my games. It was actually my first big tournament since I was a kid, and it was the toughest tournament I've ever played, and probably will play for a little bit of time. So that aside, it's basically this thing right here that happened. Fischer voluntarily damaged his structure, but he had an idea. And the thing is, Spassky here, instead of playing something like knight f3, and then maybe after knight e5 trying to do something king h1, and then, simply saying, okay, if this happens, I'm actually happy because I get the g file for my rook. And then, okay, let's say queen f6, you try to attack me further, bishop g5, and now there's no more attack, queen g6, and then, the bishop can come back, right? This is under attack. It's like bishop d2, bishop f4, for example, and now you're forced to take, and yeah, this is just better for white. But instead of that, Spassky, he went for this idea, coming back, and he played in a very defensive style. Like if he had played something bolder like f3, not allowing knight g4 all along, yes, you're potentially a victim of f5, but you have to take a certain risk, right? And then king h1, for example, to get out of this diagonals here, and it's not like black is gonna take, because then you're coming with the knight, and then of course maybe g3 f4, and you can do a lot of things here as white. And Spassky just played again defensively, and then he was forced to take. But now the thing is, Fischer's pawn structure is actually fine, and if we go even further here in this position, Spassky made a huge mistake. He went g3 instead of going bishop g3. Now I suppose Spassky did not like something about this. The thing is, the move is knight b5 here, trying to go knight to c7, but okay, the move is rook d8, and everything is defended. The whole thing is, I don't know what Spassky missed exactly in this position. The thing is, after a6, you can go f takes g4, and you can attack the queen. Queen takes on b2 is not actually scary, because even after this, you get rook to b1, and then a takes b5, and rook takes b2. And yes, it is opposite colored bishops, like h takes g4, for example, trying to get the structure back. But at the same time, this might be your best shot at doing something. You might not be winning here. Black can definitely have a good defensive setup, but it might just be your best chance. The way that Spassky did it with g3, it's not gonna end that well, because now Fischer just blocks that square from the knight, and basically says, okay, you want to go knight b5, okay, I'm just going to take that knight. You're going to take with the pawn, okay, fine. I'm just going to take your pawn, and now there's zero counterplay that you have. Plus, it's same color bishops, and I'm a pawn up, so I'm just gonna win the game. So rook f1 was played instead, a6, now not allowing that pawn, and that knight to go there anymore. And there's a saying, in the Benoni, if you manage to play b5, and remember that, if you manage to play b5, and it's not a problem for you, it's a problem for your opponent, then you won the game in the Benoni. And that's true also for this game, because you're gonna quickly see look at this pressure on the pawn here, and look at the pressure just piling up on that pawn. The rooks get doubled here. Of course, you had to defend that pawn. The queen was attacking the pawn, but now the situation gets solved. Look at this rooks. I mean, look at this. Bishop is ready to take the knight. If you dare to move the knight, I mean, where do you even move the knight, right? And then you just lose the pawn anyway. So you don't really want to move the knight. And just look at Spassky here. He can do nothing. He just goes back and forth. He just goes back and forth, and he's just basically waiting. And Fischer says, "Okay, I've calculated now. Bishop takes, and now rook takes, and that's it." And that's it, because Fischer had to make sure that he was winning, because it is, in fact, at the end of the day, opposite color bishops. Even though you're up a pawn here as black, you have to still be sure that you're winning. Spassky threatens checkmate. Of course, Fischer stops that, and now it's just a matter of remaneuvering the pieces. And a couple moves later, it's forced mate in 44 moves, and Spassky resigns because he saw that Spassky resigns because he saw that this position is lost. King e1, I take a pawn, I'm up 2 pawns, and now there's no more discussion. So, with that concluding, Fischer is now gaining momentum, and then he wins another game. He basically ties the score, and then here comes game number 6. Fischer has the white pieces, Spassky has the black pieces, and we have a Queen's Gambit declined. Classical, nothing too crazy. This is the Tartakover defense though with b6, and this implies some really complicated lines here. Bishop takes on e7, this trade also, and now rook c1, and this has been played at the top level for a couple hundred times. Even this, right? c5 is the top move. And now definitely queen a3, and this is gonna be a game of pins. Well, this is a pin, right? Because the queen would take the black queen, the white queen would take the black queen. So rook c8, you defend the pawn nicely, and now bishop b5, you activate a6, and now a6 basically invites the very forcing variation. This is basically the only variation that's really been played. Bishop e2 is also a move, but if bishop a2, bishop e2, this feels really defensive. And for example, I mean, the moves are quite weird, but queen e7, because you have to keep on defending this, plus you want to move your knight, right? So d takes on c5 would be played, but now it's just like black has a whole lot of pressure here. Let's say castles, and it's not like you're losing or anything, but it's definitely unpleasant. So you have to take the pawn first, as the bishop here is not really hanging. You know, the rook, you would lose the rook if you take the bishop. So now this variation, how it compares with the other one, well, the thing is Spassky plays rook to a7, and queen a7 could have been played also, bishop e2, and then you would kind of transpose knight e7. Honestly, it was not really impressing that bishop e2, but Spassky plays rook to a7, and the bishop still comes back, the knight comes here, but the pin is still available here on the queen. That's why queen a7 was a move, and now knight d4, right? So basically what Fischer gets is this pawn structure, but now there's only one move, and there's a move and a move only. And if you don't play this move, you're basically lost. Like if you just play something like, okay, bishop f3, and then c4, and then I guess I could go e4. Yeah, well, you lose the, you don't lose, you lose the game. You trade the queens, and now all of a sudden d4, and there's no stopping these pawns. So there's only one move in this position, and that move is e4, because now if d takes on e4, queen e3, and now these pawns are just all over the board. You have 3 pawn islands, 4 in total, but 3 pawn islands here, double isolated pawns. It's so bad. So Spassky tries to keep everything together, d4, but this still doesn't work. But again, it's like only moves. f4, trying to put the pressure here. Also now, allowing this queen h3. Queen h3 was available also before, but just making sure that everything is kind of like guarded, putting the pieces behind the pawns. Queen e7, and now e5. Also f4 supports e5. So now the knight here is a little bit more paralyzed. It cannot go to f6 anymore. Bishop c4, just putting the pressure on the pawn. The king moves. queen h3. Now you're attacking that pawn, forced to defend b3. There's no more counterplay here. You try to play a5, but again, it's nothing. f5, you attack that pawn there, and then the knight is basically forced to move. Or I mean, you can also play e4, but then like rook f1, and then there's some pressure, and the knight would be forced to move. I mean, you can take the pawn, bishop b3, c4. You can sacrifice some material, definitely, but at the end of the day, you're gonna play this move anyway, because yeah, just another move, and then your knight is gonna be forced to do so anyway. So knight h7, and then yeah, queen g3. The rook is coming in, and if not the rook, then h4, and you're just putting up so much pressure. I mean, here a4, queen e5, sorry, a4. Fischer just made sure everything is perfect before just delivering the final blow. Here he even made some moves for the time control, and then finally queen e4, setting up checkmate. The knight moves to f6, but now rook takes on f6, and it's already too late, and Spassky resigns right here after queen to f4. So really beautiful game by Fischer. Really, this e4 move was indeed, I believe that this was the most crucial move. I mean, also like the whole setup to get here. But then after this move, f4, and then just queen h3, and then bishop c4, definitely exploiting the light squares. And now I just want to show you quickly one last game here, game number 13. This is also pretty beautiful. Fischer has the black pieces, that's why we're seeing it from this perspective, because he played the Alekhine defense. And I mean, if there's something more disrespectful than playing the Alekhine defense when you're not Alekhine, and it's technically bad to play the Alekhine defense in a World Chess Championship match, then I don't know what's more disrespectful. But I think Spassky kind of messed up his preparation here a little bit, because look at Fischer. Fischer is just gonna attack this a4 pawn with everything that he has, and now Spassky is just gonna give him that pawn, and then take with the bishop for the knight, and now just try to go on a crazy attack with the development that he has. A4, bishop g5, and then here he also wastes a tempo. So that's why I think he might have got something mixed up here, because if you want to play bishop g5, why not play bishop g5 right now? It's still h6, right? Because even in this position, it's still h6. It's kind of like the same variation. G4, bishop comes back to e6, and Fischer just seems very solid. I mean, he attacks the queen. What are you gonna do here as Spassky, right? I mean, rook to e8, I'm just defending everything. f4, but bishop d5, and now okay, you attack my queen, and Spassky here gets a little bit of momentum, but I feel like in this position e6 just begs to be played. It might not be the best thing, but you have to create something, right? Knight c4, queen e2 maybe, right? And if you don't play knight c4, what are you gonna play? Right, because this is coming. You're not gonna take this pawn. This is just suicide. And just to illustrate why this is suicide is just because, for example, knight d takes, and now look at this. Look at this pressure here on that. The knight also covers the queen really nicely, and this is also under attack. And if you want to play bishop f6, okay. But now I'm just gonna play queen d3. I'm coming in king h7, for example. Yeah, I mean, I can just take, and now probably do whatever. I mean, queen c3, I'm taking a pawn. Yeah, I'm just doing much better here. Bishop. So yeah, in this position, knight d4, for example, and I mean, you're just lost. So you still have to be careful as black, and you can definitely go wrong. I think Fischer would have seen the continuations, but you have to play e6, and Spassky played queen c3, maybe trying to set up one last perfect thing, but now, I mean, now it's just already too late. And look at that, Fischer just set up everything right, and now knight d6, and now a surprising move if you're not careful. Queen takes on d6, what? But you also take the queen back, and after the tactical solution of the problem, here comes just the pawns, and then Fischer even offers a rook. And the crazy thing about this game is that in the end it actually ends up being a draw if we skip a little bit here. If we skip ahead a little bit, I mean the end game just gets more and more complicated. But at the end of the day, Fischer sacrifices a bishop, thinking this endgame is winning, and it may be winning, but here he makes a little bit of a mistake with the plan that he goes for, and now apparently this is a draw. But why? Well, because what is White actually gonna do? B3 check, and now okay. Fischer tries to basically distract Spassky, but how are you making progress? Here is the moment where Spassky went really wrong. He went rook d1 check and he lost the game. Basically, if you would have went rook c3 check, king e2, now there's no more problem. You take a pawn, f3, f3 is no problem because you just give a check. Let's say king d1 maybe, but now you give another check. And if you ever try to like run away here, now you can play something like rook a4, f2, king b3, king g1, let's say. But now there's only one move, bishop c5 coming back to guard that. But okay, if let's say king g2, now I can take the pawn. Okay, and then if king to e1, then I can also take the pawn, because if you make a queen, I can give you a check and then I can take that queen. So this was definitely a draw, but Fischer did not give up, and then Spassky just, I think due to pressure and everything, he just made a mistake, and now this is losing. After f2 he resigns, because even if rook f4, now I just capture, and this is just the end. I mean, rook g4, and you can come back and get my queen, don't get me wrong, but now you're lost because you can never take the pawn. I just make a queen. So you can obviously watch more of this on YouTube. You can also watch a lot of documentaries about this match. This was crazy. I will always look back with joy on this match, and I think this was one of the most legendary, if not the most legendary match of all time. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you all in the next one. Kowalsky